1980, on a quiet stretch of Venice Beach, 7 youthful architects gathered for what would become an iconic photograph. At the time, they were bold innovators, shaping a new architectural language rooted in Los Angeles, but destined for global impact. This single image captured the energy of a moment, a group of creators poised to redefine their craft. 45 years later, 4 members of that group reunite to reflect on their groundbreaking careers, the city they helped transform, and the enduring legacy of their work. Tom Main is a Pritzker Prize award-winning architect and co-founder of Morphosis, known for bold, unconventional buildings in cities across the globe. Eric Owen Moss is best known for transforming a stretch of Culver City into a neighborhood of wild, one-of-a-kind structures. Craig Hodges is a designer who blends architecture with pop culture and technology, co-founding the influential firm Hodgetts and Fung. Frederick Fisher has created many beloved spaces for museums, schools, and artists that feel welcoming and serene. Through candid conversations and a restaging of that legendary photograph, this film charts the evolution of their ideas, their friendships, and the architectural soul of Los Angeles itself.
So let's speak about the work actually in this 50 years since the 1980 photo. You lose your virginity, as it were, with the photo, with John Dreyfus, with Domus, with the spotlight. And your careers take off, and LA also takes off.
That's when I dropped out.
Meaning?
I said sayonara to my studio at Rose Avenue and went into the movie business as far as I could go. And
why?
I'm not a very patient person. And the lack of immediacy in the world of architecture was very frustrating. And I had kind of gotten into a realm of building sets and designing sets for movie productions. And I was thrilled to touch base with all the fabricators, and that's a culture that's, again, a kind of wing of making things that I loved. And it was very inspiring. And so when I came back to architecture, and it's interesting, and I think that your 2468 house also had a narrative embedded in it. And it began to influence the way I looked at architecture as storytelling. And so that experience really molded where I went from there.
I would say that's the one thing that I brought from 40 years ago to today is it is about storytelling. And that's one of the things I took away from working with Frank, is that I think I finally, after a couple of years, understood what an architectural idea was. And that the notion of being able to tell a story and to express a metaphor and to communicate with people. And then almost accidentally, that somebody at Princeton said, let's throw them in the mix and see what they might bring to this project. And we got a project we had no business getting because we had no experience, but we communicated, we told a story that let them understand we understood them better than they understood themselves. They learned something and they said, yes, we want that kind of thinking. And yes, you described what we want, and we didn't even know that. And so that actually changed the course of our practice. And for the last 20 years, academia and cultural institutions has been the heart of our practice. I love telling stories and figuring out missions, and I like nothing better than to dive in and figure out what is the essence of this problem through the layers and layers and layers and layers, and then be able to figure out how to communicate that.
One of the things that glues this group together, that makes it unique, is it's all challenging a normative behavior of the profession. And that all of us are interested in somehow having something to do with reshaping the profession, reshaping what architecture is or isn't, right? And it's not through buildings necessarily. For some of us, yes, or both, and for some of us not. And I'm sitting next to this guy who's this brilliant guy that has a big brain, that's a thinker. But it's in the broadest sense of thinking. And in fact, most of it started without building. Most of it started that people had some idea of who we were and what our interests were and what our values were and what we're subscribing to through our drawings or through our writing or through our models, or et cetera. And it was, I would think, absolutely important. And going back to the New York, LA thing, and going back to this photograph, there's a group of people here that there's no SOM people there. There are no people that have already kind of accomplished, quote, accomplished things through construction, but it was through ideas, through thinking about reconstructing what architecture is or isn't as an art form.
And I think I made an effort not to belong to a pattern. And that doesn't mean I achieved it, and it doesn't mean you agree with that. But I think as a goal, I think my goal wouldn't be different than it was when the photograph was shot.
In some ways, you'd have been, of this group, you have, I think, one of the more unusual practices in the globe. And that you're somebody that's had a single patron for the time we're talking about, more or less, for half a century, that's allowed you to pursue a conceptual project within the continuity of having that single client, which allowed you to operate conceptually, and it gave you a freedom that I don't think anybody in this group had, which is really rare, right? Where none of us have had that. We're starting with complete different, not just clients, but client groups, and the whole kind of essence of who you're communicated to is that you have to establish a whole different means of communication. And you literally, it's a learning process.
I don't quite know how it happened or why it happened or whether that's another conversation. It has its own issues, but nevertheless, it worked more than it didn't. And then it allows you to concentrate on the craft or the content, if not solely, but largely. So I would say if I'm in that position, maybe it's fortunate, maybe it isn't. Let history say. But I appreciate the opportunity. I don't have any excuses to make about the content. Nobody made me do it.
Did you ever ratchet back to thinking about the heyday of Venice, Italy, and the patronage of
The Guel family,
yes,
or the Medici family, or something.
because I think
The
that
Smiths
parallel,
like that.
allows for the most luxurious creative environment.
Lucretia Borgia and Lorenzo de' Medici, they like that.
All that stuff. And I think that was, really allowed, in terms of the global gestation of architectural vocabulary, allowed you to explore forbidden territory and realize it. And, that I think is unique. And I don't think it would ever happen anywhere other than LA.